Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update with Andy Wint.
First of all, good evening. It's 5:30. This is Update for Friday, 21st of July, 2023 from Manx Radio. 30 minutes to look at the latest news on the Isle of Man. Background to that news and sport and business and Sea Watch and travel updates. The newsmakers in person. This evening's strategic plan for the use of land is being reviewed. Russian MHK says the public's lost faith over the Liverpool Terminal. Southern 100 inquests open today. Peel commissioners ask who's going to pay for highway maintenance, and plans to expand Ramsey get a backlash.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
First of all, at 29 minutes ahead of 6 o'clock, the Update News headlines. Fast to my Christian Jones.
Fast to my. Members of the public and Tynwald members have lost faith in government's handling of their new Isle of Man ferry terminal in Liverpool, according to the Speaker. Juan Waterton successfully managed to adjourn a debate into allocating an additional £10 million for the project, saying more scrutiny was needed. The inquests into the death of 2 people killed at the Southern 100 have been opened at Douglas Courthouse today. William Clark and Alan Connor died following an incident in qualifying on Castletown Bypass on the 11th of July. And daily runway closures at Ronaldsway Airport are said to be significantly reduced from the beginning of August. A new air traffic control roster means there'll only be 2 periods of closures compared to the 5 currently in effect. In international news, tributes are being paid to an American singer, Tony Bennett, who's died at the age of 96. Musician Paul Young calls him one of the greats, while the Amy Winehouse Foundation says he was a true star. Boris Johnson will hand over messages from his old mobile phone to the COVID inquiry. His spokesman says technical experts have managed to recover them. And Simon Pegg, Imelda Staunton and Brian Cox are among the A-listers taking part in a rally in solidarity with striking actors in America. They've been protesting in London's Leicester Square. Those are the Update News headlines, next at 6.
Man Benham. Contact us by phone, video call, email or face-to-face. We're happy to connect with you. Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Jeremiah, thank you, Christian. From the Ronaldsway Met Office, there is a strong wind warning in operation for the North Irish Sea. State of sea is slight, occasionally moderate overnight. And the 3-day weather, rain on the way on a moderate southwesterly wind, becoming persistent overnight, minimum temperature 13 Celsius. And for Jasan, wet tomorrow with widespread hill, fog in a moderate to fresh southwesterly, top temperature 17 Celsius. More rain after dark and down to 14 through the night. Into Jadouni, showers and sunny intervals on Sunday and a light to moderate westerly. Daylight maximum is 18 Celsius. Tides on the way out at the moment. Low water 22 minutes to 9. Sunset 24 minutes to 10. High tide 21 minutes before 3 a.m. Sunrise 14 minutes past 5. And the morning low tide at 14 minutes past 9.
Visit the Manx Glass and Glazing website and see a range of products from windows to doors, mirrors to splashbacks. manxglass.com.
The Manx government's announced a full review of its strategic plan, which sets out policies, development and the use of land across the Isle of Man. It plays a key part when area plans are formed and in outcomes of planning applications. Christian's back with that story.
The strategic plan covers various policies such as the location and distribution of future developments, including housing, climate change requirements, renewable energy generation, recreational space and employment land. The first plan was approved by Tynwald in 2007, although being likened to a holiday brochure for Disney. But aside from a partial review in 2016, the current document remains largely unchanged. At the time it was first introduced, it was a 21-page document. Some people argued it didn't have enough meat on the bones, but again at the same time others praised its slimline appearance. But with this update, the government hopes changes that are made will allow the island to fulfil its island plan and economic strategy ambition conditions. Of course, as we've heard numerous times before, part of those documents include increasing the population to 100,000. The Cabinet Office Minister Kate Brennan has described the review as a significant step forward for planning. A consultation period is also underway, which closes towards the end of September, details of which can be found at manxradio.com.
The death of a tree surgeon from Erie in November of last year was accidental. The verdict, recorded at Douglas Courthouse this week, is Lewis Foster.
Frank Edward Murray, described as a well-respected, meticulous and focused man of his trade, died in intensive care days after suffering a suspension injury in Old Kirkbraden churchyard. The 64-year-old became suspended in the air by his equipment on the 21st of November after the tree limb one of his lines was connected to came down. The court heard of the efforts of another tree surgeon, James Beach, a former employee of Mr. Murray, who happened to be driving past the churchyard when he saw Frank suspended from the tree. Rushing to his aid, he used Mr. Murray's own chainsaw to cut the sideline connected to the failed branch, sending Mr. Murray further into the air but vitally relieving some of the pressure being caused by his harness and safety lines and allowing him to breathe better and communicate with those helping from below. Fire and rescue crews said Mr. Beach's quick thinking undoubtedly helped, and there was nothing more he could have done. Family members were asked if they had any questions for Mr. Beach, to which they said, "No, just thank you." After his rescue, Mr. Murray spent several days in ICU at Nobles Hospital before scans showed the damage to his internal organs was inoperable and ultimately not survivable. He was taken off life support and died on the 24th of November. In a statement, Mr. Murray's wife said he was incredibly fit and meticulous with safety and questioned whether his equipment could have been tampered with. However, examinations undertaken after his death proved his equipment was in a serviceable order before he started the work. A DEFRA arborist said the failure of the tree limb could have been caused either by the wind or Mr. Murray's movements, but any issues with the branch would have been difficult to identify beforehand. Coroner of Inquests Jane Hughes said she could rule out any third-party interference in the fatal incident, ultimately recording a verdict of accidental death.
The Isle of Man in 30 minutes. Update on Manx Radio with Andy Wint.
Fast am I. Russian MHK and Speaker of the House of Keys Juan Watterson this week successfully managed to adjourn a debate into allocating an additional £10 million for the Liverpool link span. Members of the public and Tynwald members, he says, have lost faith in the government handling the new Isle of Man ferry terminal in Liverpool.
There's, I think, a lot of scrutiny that needs to be done before Tynwald is expected to write yet another cheque into this really big project. So therefore, this allows a bit more time on that. The Public Accounts Committee has been looking at this project, has been doing a lot of work on it, and our report is due out over the summer. And I think that that'll answer a lot of the questions that I think members want to know, the public want to know, about where this went wrong in the early years. So that is something that I think will help bring people on the journey of where this project's at, and will help inform the decision that we'll ultimately make in November about the last elements of money that will go towards this.
Do you think this is an acceptance now that this government recognises that the Manx public has lost quite a lot of faith in this project over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think that is fair to say. This is a project that has always been a complicated one. It's always been a project that has been needed. Whilst there have been other sites that have been touted around, I think there was a general desire for the Manx public to want to go into the heart of Liverpool. So options have been limited. There have been many other factors as well that have gone into this that have meant that far more money has gone into this project than was ever envisioned at the start of it. We were talking about sort of £25 million at the start of this project. We're now looking at sort of 80 million plus. So I think people are right to be frustrated and annoyed, and they deserve the answers that I think members of Tynwald do as well. I think when the building's in place, the link span's put in, they're starting the sea trials early in the new year. If that is indeed the plan and the timetable that is brought to bear on this, then I think by that point there's no reason why government shouldn't have a significant amount of certainty as to the maximum cost that is going to be incurred by the taxpayer on this project.
Peel commissioners reckon the Department of Infrastructure Highway Maintenance Charter could cost ratepayers more money. Town Clerk in Peel, Derek Sewell, says the agreement's at an early stage, but there are still no answers as to how it's going to be funded.
Our commissioners are supportive of carrying out these functions locally because they can usually respond quicker, and it enhances some of the work that we already do. So as long as there's a clear understanding of what those minimum standards are and who's paying for them, and that ultimately, if the department is prescribing minimum standards, then obviously that needs to be funded by the department. Because ultimately the functions are carried out under a delegation rather than a transfer of functions. So if we don't perform the functions adequately, the department under the legislation would pull those back into the Department of Infrastructure, and they would be responsible for carrying out those duties, and therefore they should have funding to undertake them. We don't know what that funding arrangement is. It's been suggested that some of it, potentially all of it, could have to be funded from the rates rather than from central taxation and road tax. Well, they're currently at the stage of it being a draft, and they're consulting on it still. We were told last week that the desire was to get it in place for 2024, but obviously any funding mechanism for that would have to be sorted out very quickly, because the commissioners usually start thinking about setting their rates in October for the following year. Then the funding mechanism needs to be clearly understood by the local authorities and by the public.
Sea-Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
Mothership Ben McCree departed Heysham at 22 minutes past 2. She'll be into Douglas in the next 20 minutes or so, departing this evening at 7:45 for Heysham, arriving at 11:30. The overnight departure is at 2:15, back to Douglas at 6 tomorrow morning. The high-speed craft Manannan left Douglas at 7 minutes past 3. She'll be in Liverpool. Well, she was in the Mersey now. Will be on the link span in the next 10 minutes. Departing Liverpool at 7:15, back to Douglas at 10 tonight. Tomorrow morning's departures, 7:15, Manannan heads to Liverpool, 8:45, Ben McCree to Heysham.
Follow the Steam Packet on Twitter for the latest sailing information.
Proposals to expand the Ramsey boundary have received backlash from people in the area. Ramsey commissioners are behind the idea after stating it believes the town's at capacity, but residents from Lazaire, Garth and Ramsey have been asked for their views.
Ramsey is an urban local authority and it's responsible for the town of Ramsey, whereas Lazaire is the opposite. It's a rural local authority and it's responsible for the parish of Lazaire. So much of this proposed extension is taking in arable and pastoral agricultural land. We don't really see the need for it.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't think we agree with having the boundary change whatsoever. I think we're quite happy with how it is at the moment, and we don't really want to see any change.
The cost. Yeah. Ridiculous. We're not going to get any more for it. Why should we pay for something that we're not going to get? Do you know what I mean?
Concerned about your rate rises. Someone was saying they might double.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You know, they're hitting us everywhere with electric, and food prices have gone ridiculous. It's not good.
Everybody feels the same way. We don't want this to happen, and I think everybody will try and fight it as much as they can.
We live in Glen Alden, and we cannot understand why Ramsey would look to expand when they have to put their own house in order. They need to get Ramsey vibrant, put it back to what it used to be. For the last 30 years it's deteriorated. People are not going to come up north unless we have the facilities for people to shop, to buy, to do things for business. And all their proposals have nothing based on that at all. They're just grabbing green land, and they haven't a thought of how to develop what they need to do is put their own house in order.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
At 16 minutes before 6, in corporate news, First Group said in an update today that its trading performance for the financial year to date was in line with expectations. It outlined in June. The FTSE 250 passenger transport operator also said it had completed £70.9 million of its £75 £5 million on-market share buyback programme launched last December, adding that on completion it planned to initiate another buyback of up to £115 million worth of shares, subject to approval at its annual general meeting being held later in the day. And for a full daily market report, go to ramseycrookall.com. Electric flying taxis will take to the sky from 2026, says Brazilian plane maker Embraer. As a new factory will be built near Sao Paulo in Brazil to produce the aircraft, Embraer subsidiary Eve will build a small helicopter with enough space for up to 6 customers. It's envisaged a trip will cost between £40 and £80 per person. Eve says it's already got orders for 3,000 air taxis and will assemble a prototype this year. US regulators recently released a timeline for air taxis to be flying there as early as 2025. The electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft won't need a runway but can travel long distances like an aeroplane. Electric motors should reduce noise and pollution compared with standard planes.
The Stock Market Report, brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
UK and European markets closed higher as investors digested a fresh round of corporate earnings. US stocks climbed, oil edged higher and gold priced lower. The numbers from Ramsey Crookall at the close in London. The FTSE 100 up 0.25% at 7,663. The DAX in Frankfurt down almost 0.2% at the close at 16,177. A short time ago in New York City, the Dow Jones Industrial up 0.25% at 35,313. The Nasdaq Tech Stocks Index up 0.2% at 14,088. The S&P 500 in Chicago up 0.33% at 4,549. In the exchange markets, the British pound sterling is trading at $1 28.5 cents, €1 15.5 cents, and 23 South African rand 6.7 cents. In commodities, gold is down 0.33% at $1,961 per troy ounce, and a barrel of Brent crude up almost 1.5% at $80.63.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future. For a house, or the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Isle of Man Water Sports. Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Here's the relevant information. If you're sailing, kayaking, windsurfing, paddleboarding, sea swimming, diving or surfing this weekend, sea temperatures 15 degrees. And for Saturday, the wind is southwesterly, force 4 or 5, occasionally force 6 to start, backing south or southwesterly, force 3 or 4 through the afternoon. Wave height 0.7 to 1.2 metres, becoming 0.2 to 0.8 metres. Wave period 4.5 to 5.5 seconds. High tides 3:15 p.m. And for Sunday, the wind is southerly or southwesterly, force 3 or 4, becoming variable, force 3 or less. Wave height 0.2 to 0.8 metres. Wave period 4.5 to 5 seconds. High tide at 3:45 p.m.
Manx Glass and Glazing can produce bespoke splashbacks for your kitchen in any colours. Speak to the team on 674 573. Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300.
The inquests into the death of 2 people killed at the Southern 100 have been opened at Douglas Courthouse today. The 2023 event was called off as a result of the fatalities. Tessa Hawley was at the inquest for Manx Radio.
William Clark, known as Liam, and Alan Connor died following an incident in qualifying on the Castletown bypass on the 11th of July. Competitor Mr Connor, who was 50 and from County Meath in Ireland, suffered multiple injuries after sustaining blunt force trauma caused by multiple impacts with roadside structures. The court was told the engineer was formally identified by a police inspector 3 days later via his identification dog tags and his personalised leathers. Southern 100 organisers had also confirmed to the Isle of Man Constabulary January that he was the only racer who hadn't returned from the final lap of the Tuesday practice session. 66-year-old Mr. Clark, a marshal from Wigan who was volunteering at the event on the Blount circuit, suffered head, spinal and chest injuries as a result of multiple blunt force trauma. Coroner of Inquest James Brooks extended his condolences to the families of both men and released their bodies so that funeral arrangements can take place. Investigations into both deaths are continuing and the inquests have been adjourned to a date to be set. Paying tribute to Mr. Clark and Mr. Connor after the fatal collision, Southern 100 organisers said the loss of both men was felt deeply amongst the racing community. In a statement given at the time, they added the Southern 100 Road Racing Club pass on their deepest sympathy to Alan and Liam's families, their loved ones and their friends.
Manx Radio Sport.
Faster My Dave Moore.
Faster My, one of the biggest events in the Manx sporting calendar takes place this weekend. Tomorrow sees the UCI individual time trial in Minusculo Fondo, followed by the UCI Grand Fondo and Medio and Piccolo Fondo rides the following day. A cyclist not just from the Isle of Man enjoy riding on closed roads. One of the organisers of the Grand Fondo is Paul Phillips.
The big thing, I think, is the UCI Grand Fondo World Series status. The Isle of Man event is a qualifier for that, and this year it's the final qualifier before the finals in Glasgow next month. And for sure, that's the thing that's driving the off-island attendance. There was only one more of these in the UK, and that's ended this year. There was one in Cambridge, and it won't take place again. So at the moment, going forward, if we continue to do this, the Isle of Man will be the only Grand Fondo in the British Isles, actually. So it's a real point of difference, and it's something that the island should be proud of, because we enable events like this where we can close the roads and get good support from across the populace to put major events like this on.
One of the favourites for honours is local rider Becky Story. She says she's proud of the island and its cycling heritage.
I think the Isle of Man, has always been known as a great cycling destination, and we've got, obviously legendary cyclists like Mark Cavendish and Peter Kenyak, and the list just goes on, coming from such a small place. And I know I always feel really proud to tell people that I'm from the Isle of Man, and everyone's always like, oh wow, yeah, that's a great place to ride, and Mark Cavendish. And so yeah, I think they've obviously done a lot for the island and the cycling community, and it's just nice to see it growing, and yeah, I'm really, really pleased to be from here.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Inbound at Ronald's Way, the 20 to 5 EasyJet from Belfast International hasn't yet landed. Will be in the next 5 minutes or so. Next inbound after that is the 5 to 8 Loganair from Liverpool. Then it's the Loganair 20 past 8 from London City, and the 8:30 EasyJet from London Gatwick. Outbound, well, that Belfast International that should go out at 10 past 5 won't be going out until 20 past 6. Then it's next outbound 6 o'clock EasyJet to Manchester, 6 o'clock Loganair to Liverpool, and then the 9 o'clock EasyJet back to London Gatwick. On the roads, gravel roads closed between Harbour Road and Fairway Close in Onchan for gas upgrade work. In Onchan too, there are 24-hour lights on Buttermere Drive for work on the sewers. Near Foxdale, Garth Road and Tosselby Road and the Foxdale Road for bridge replacement work. That's closed there, the Garth Road. East Quay Peel's closed between the House of Manannan and the road bridge. In Jerby, the Ballymena Road's got phased closures. In Douglas, temporary lights on Victoria Road at the Falconcliffe Terrace junction for water main work. Port Cornet Road in Glenmona is closed for emergency road repairs. And in Santon, temporary lights on the new Castletown Road near the motel at Santon for patching work. Temporary lights on Station Road, Port Erin near Ballamadrel for gas main work. It's the Viking longboat races in Peel tomorrow. Look out around East Quay and Weatherglass Corner between noon and 5:30. And the Grand Fondo is on this weekend. Tomorrow the mountain road's closed from Barrule Park, Ramsey to Faulty Will Road between 9:30 and midday 30, and there are restrictions too around the Murrock Park, Park Road, North Shore Road and Ballaclone Road from 3:30 to 5:30. On Sunday, a number of routes around the island are affected. Go to grandfondoisleofman.com for all the details.
H&HMotorcycles.im for all your motorcycle requirements. Southgate Industrial Estate, opposite Quayside Tyres. Call 665646. Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates.
The Chief Minister has told Tynwald members, "I am not a school principal," following concerns raised at how politicians are using social media. MHK Jason Morehouse questioned whether ministers' Twitter and Facebook accounts were monitored and if they're expected to abide by certain rules. That story from Christian Jones.
Over the past few months, we've seen politicians in heated rows on social media, not least on Twitter. MHK Tim Glover labelled recent spats as childish, whilst the Treasury Minister Alex Allinson urged members to conduct themselves properly. But despite the Chief Minister referring to a document which sets out how politicians are expected to use social media in their daily lives and in accordance with their jobs, he doesn't think it's his job to ensure it's enforced.
Mr. President, I'm not the school principal. Ministers and members, as we know, have a large responsibility on themselves to conduct themselves properly and in a manner that they deem as appropriate. I've just said to the honourable member, not disinterested, but clearly there is a clear guideline for me, specifically in the government code, regarding when matters are of a serious enough nature to launch an investigation or to discuss matters formally with the minister. Some of the matters that are raised are often much broader discussions. And if honourable members feel strongly enough there needs to be a strengthened code when it comes to how people write and engage on social media, then I would be, of course, interested to read those thoughts, but my initial view would be that they should refer them to the appropriate Tynwald committee.
That's it for Update tonight and for this week. Thanks to newsreader Dave Moore, producer Rhiannon Evans. It's compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Stick around. Dave Moore's on after 6 tonight with Friday Sport. The greatest hits with Chris Tinley at 6:30. And I'm back Monday.
WIN